A fair implementation profile, I think it's a good name for what we were trying to do. It's really just a list, a profile of the choices made by a community that is attempting to fairify some of their data and services. So it's pretty straightforward, tabular, or just a list of resources, digital resources that you would use in order to implement each of the FAIR principles. It really started from this realization in GoFair that there was already existing a lot of very good options in order to implement the FAIR principles. So we were sort of living in an abundance of solutions to FAIR, and the real problem was not so much technological, but it was one of convergence, or to try and find wide agreements on the use of standards in order to get the most widespread interoperability or other parameters, other dimensions of FAIR that you're interested in. And we really started with this in a very concrete way in GoFair, because we operate in GoFair by working with voluntary groups that we call implementation networks. And I think right now GoFair has about 25 or 30 implementation networks. They cover the range of different knowledge domains. Some of them are very infrastructure and technical. Others are very much data oriented or content oriented. And the idea was that we wanted somehow to, as a GoFair International Support Coordination Office, we wanted to somehow support the coordination of all these different implementation networks. And so to do that, it was very straightforward to think, well, okay, if we can list their strategies and their implementation choices for each of the FAIR principles, then it would be pretty easy just for different implementation networks to just inspect the profiles of the other implementation networks. And that would probably lead to better choices and decisions on the implementations to go after in order to increase interoperability or, like I say, other dimensions of FAIR. So we started with that in a plenary meeting of the implementation networks in GoFair, and I think that was January 2019. And we were supported in that in a big way by Christina Hetner, who's working at the University Library here in Leiden. That triggered 2 years of pretty informal, but very committed work by a group of people associated with GoFair to develop the idea and to sharpen it, to make it more technical, to build tooling around it. And eventually that led, well, let's say, not even eventually, but during that 2-year process, Barbara Magagna, who's at the Austrian Environmental Agency, really deployed the idea in a very concrete way in a project called EnviFair. And that's a pretty sizable project. I think there's 14 research infrastructures in EnviFair, and they use the FAIR implementation profile idea to actually begin aligning standards and approaches towards FAIR in these 14 environmental research infrastructures. So Barbara was a champion of this from the beginning, and with the working group and with Barbara's effort, we really began to get concrete experience on the FIP, how it works, what's working, what's not working. And then it really took off in early 2020 with the COVID pandemic. And there it became important for lots of different organizations, international, all over the world, interested in now trying to collect and make interoperable and make FAIR COVID data. So then it became really important to show, how it is, what are the options available to you to do that in a rapid way. So that's kind of the background of it. Maybe the last thing to say about this is, in the COVID pandemic, an important conference was canceled for us, and that was a CoData GoFair conference on convergence, we call it, And that's where, you can try and get widespread agreement on approaches. And this conference was to be held in Paris in October. It was taken completely online, and so it was no longer a physical event. That freed up a budget that allowed us to then run 6 workshops around the FAIR implementation profile. And we ended up working in the end with 25 communities, and we were able to develop some really excellent tooling that now has resulted in 25 really high quality, bleeding edge FAIR implementation profiles that are all themselves FAIR data. They are all machine actionable, or at least machine readable. So it was really, the COVID program really kind of supercharged our approach to developing the FAIR implementation profile.